time. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate that. Actually, that's one of the things my wife says. She's like, how many of you guys, I'd be interested, how many of you guys say you're sorry for things all the time? Doesn't matter. You just always apologizing to everybody.
Guilty. Yep. Sorry for that.
And that's what they say, right? Yeah. Sorry for apologizing all the time. I didn't mean to do that. My wife came home, so she said, you know what I read? She said, I read, instead of saying sorry all the time, the first words out of your mouth should be thank you. Whenever you want to say sorry, say thank you. I was like, what? She goes, say thank you right away. And I was like what? She goes, well, if we're out hiking, and I'm hiking and I don't feel very fast today, I might say, hey, I'm really sorry, I'm going so slow, I just don't feel good. And it's all the negative feelings, right? But if she feels like she wants to say she's sorry, she'll say, hey, thanks for being patient with my pace today. Hey, no problem, babe. I got no problem with the pace. We're just out here enjoying nature, right? So now instead of saying sorry all the time, say thank you, because now you got to figure out what the thank you's for. She'll be like, thank you. And I'll be like, thank you for what? She'll be like, well, I'm walking really slow. Thank you for being patient with me. Now she has to search for something she appreciates in that moment instead of feeling self-conscious like she's slowing me down. Changes the game. It's just a little bit of a twist on that radio dial to bring that frequency into where we want it. So, crazy stuff. Very fortunate. I've had a chance to work with Gene Zannetti from Wrestling Mindset for years. He was a consultant for us when I was coaching up at Stevens. You guys have been partners with USA Wrestling, corporate sponsors in the past, partnership, and just an awesome opportunity because I know a lot of us in the room don't do a ton with the sports psychology side, and I call it parent meetings, but it's probably better titled parent relationships, right? Parent meetings are a part of it. So I got a couple of slides as we're going through. This is the expert, and I'm just going to be the slide clicker for the most part. So ask him questions, see what works. He'll offer suggestions as we come through this. He has not had a chance to see this presentation yet, which is awesome because I just love to just wing things like that and throw people in front of the bus and see if they can stop it from crashing into people. So our goal and objective for this is to maximize parent relationships through clear communication and whatever tools we can pick up. About an hour. We've got a couple of videos we want to show. Gene's already picked up a few topics from the last presentation that he wants to make sure that he hits on as well. And again, we'll do some small group discussion, large group presentations. And what we'll do is as we go into our groups, Gene can kind of go around and maybe on a couple of these, you can work with a few of the different groups. I'll work with a couple of groups so that maybe we'll just be a fly on the wall. And if you guys have questions or concerns, we can kind of jump in and run with that. So the two key areas we're going to talk about, parent roles and expectations. How do we set those? How do we define them? And what should they look like? And then a parent meeting agenda. We've got some sample parent meeting agendas that are in your handouts. And again, a lot of these come from Wade Gilbert's book. So if you get that book, you're going to get a ton of great resources. So we'll dig in. Here's a coach talking a little bit. 59 seconds.
All the details about what you do in that meeting or letter. But I can tell you that if you have 15 parents on your team, you have 15 different set of expectations for how things should be done. And if you don't actually communicate to parents how you're going to do things, like for a youth program, I'm going to play my kids 70% of the time, the better players, and my poor players will get no less than 40% of the time. Well, if you don't communicate that to people, you'll have 15 different sets of parents, and some parents were going to expect all the good kids to play, and maybe the weaker kids won't get much time. And other kids or other parents will expect everything to be equal. Okay, and there's not a right or a wrong here. Okay, it's just that somebody has to decide. So you need to tell people up front how you're going to do what you're going to do.
What do you think?
So we're big believers, like exactly what you said about in the beginning, about how we have to all be on the same page with knowing our values. That's absolutely critical. We got to know who we are and why we're here, right? So our big why is really the same thing as yours. We want to maximize the athlete's potential, not only in sports, but school and their entire life. So when we talk about with parents, the key is remembering we want to create a well-oiled machine with our programs. Athlete, coaches, parents, and mindset coaches. Like the teams that we're involved with, whenever we work with a team, we always strongly encourage, don't only bring your team, But all your coaches and all the parents, bring your rec team if you have a rec team. A lot of high school teams are also affiliated with a club, a local wrestling club. Bring them in too. I want to have as many people there as possible, and we provide our mindset services. So right off the bat, we're setting clear expectations. We want the communication to be very clear right from the beginning. So just like we talk about core values, we have 4 mindset principles that we have the team say out loud before and after every workout. And now a lot of teams will add a few extra mindset principles there. Our Utah team, that high school team, they do another 7, they do another 3 mindset principles. Another team we were just talking to Cornell College, we're going to be working with them next year. They want to add a couple other mindset principles. Great, that's fine. But we want to establish that in our first mindset session with the team. That's critical. So when we talk about, we don't focus on the crowd, the records, the rankings, the seedings, and the predictions. I don't know about you, but when I was competing, I'd come home, my dad would first say, oh, did you see what this guy did? This guy pinned that guy, or he beat them, right? Or you're going up against the guy who took 3rd in the state last year. Or you lost to this guy when you were in 5th grade. Who knows what I'm talking about? Say aye. Aye. How many of us are guilty of doing that to people? Say aye. Aye. And I'll put up 2 hands for myself. So this is going to be like a do as I say, not as I did when I was competing. Because I had two younger brothers. They're both ranked in the top 20 in the country. One was an all-Ivy League wrestler. The other one was ranked as high as 6th. My brother Greg, who's actually in Rome right now studying to be a priest. He's got another 2 years left. And he actually also trains with Team Italy. So now that he just finished up his classes, he goes over and trains with Abraham Cagneto. Some of you know him from by way of Cuba. He trains with Team Italy. Took 3rd in the world last year. My brother's his training partner while he's studying to be a priest. So it's a pretty crazy thing. But the reason why I go into that is we really want to make sure that everyone's on the same page and we're speaking the same language. So when the coaches and the parents are at that first meeting that we have with the team, the parents can then speak up and they could get our feedback and we say, is there anything you want to add to this? Does this all make sense? So then we establish very early on that we're not talking about records, rankings, seedings, and predictions. Our focus is on the 3 things within our control: effort, attitude, and aggressiveness. Kyle Snyder spoke about this at the Maryland Coaches Convention. Did I see a Maryland shirt here? Maryland, someone? Well, anyway, Kyle Snyder spoke about this right after I spoke about it at the Maryland Convention about 2 years ago. So you want to establish that right away and ask if there's any questions so you could always go back to it. Also, so parents that weren't at that in the beginning of the season meeting, now you could say, if they're disagreeing with you, it's like, well, we went over this already. So it's about creating a well-oiled machine. So everyone's got to be on the same page and want to be speaking the same language. So if that helps a little bit.
That's awesome. And it's almost like we know each other. We didn't plan this. Simon Sinek. How many of you have seen the Simon Sinek Know Your Why? Okay, this is good. This is great.
The golden circle, they call it.
This is an 18-minute video. I'm not going to show all 18 minutes. I would highly recommend. It's a TED Talk. If you type in Know Your Why, that's literally all you have to type into a Google field. This is going to come up. Look for the guy with the nice shirt and all that kind of stuff. Not necessarily a wrestling guy, but if you know your why going in, my wife and I say that too, and I like to use that as the comparison. If we get in an argument, I need to know what I want to get out of it. Otherwise, I'm just arguing to argue, and that's endless, right? And so that's not I need to know why I'm in this. What do I want to get out of it? So I'll play a little bit of this, and then again, I would encourage you guys to check it out on your own as a great tool.
Should be watching TED Talks all the time. And Pop Tech also, same thing.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet, they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered man flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered man flight? The Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operated it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiated value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because it's easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right?
Thoughts? Now you're going to walk into a parent meeting. You're going to be talking to these parents. And you're going to say, what do we do? Oh, we wrestle. And how do we wrestle? We wrestle tough and we win. But we miss the why. And are we going to be able to get those 15 different sets of parents on the same page without communicating that message from the inside out?
Using wrestling as a vehicle to improve them in their entire life. That's what I would say. Using wrestling as a vehicle to build virtue. And exactly what we were saying before, it's in those tough moments that kids learn what they see much more than what you say, right? I know even when I was coaching, it goes in one ear, out the other, but they're watching you like a hawk. 90% of communication is nonverbal. So we all say sports build virtue, right? Sports build value. Well, where do they learn that? When the rubber meets the road, in those difficult moments. What's the decision that's made, even if it's at my expense possibly? That's where we teach the virtue, and it's not just with our athletes, it's with our children, it's with the people that work for us. It's critical. So making sure that we're using wrestling, yeah. Oh, no, you're good. So using wrestling as a vehicle to improve them in their whole life. I say with mindset all the time, confidence is confidence. Mental toughness is mental toughness. Whether we're wrestling on mat 1 in the state finals, whether we're taking the SATs or ACTs, we have a wrestler that we work with, right? Wrestling's not so much of an issue. Does really well in the practice SATs. Chokes in the real SATs. Wants to go to Harvard. Here's the problem. The only way to get into Harvard is doing well on the actual SATs. So he's got to learn how to relax under pressure. So it's the same thing there. Job interview in the future. These kids graduate school. Now you have 3 adults in your face saying, why should I hire you? And you're fresh out of college. And the last 3 people that came in had 10 years work experience. Do you have the confidence to stand up under that heat? And what about saying no to drugs and peer pressure? How many athletes have you lost? The most talented people because they can't say no to drugs. They'll never miss a party. They're always staying up late. They're playing, they're on Snapchat the whole day, playing Fortnite, burning the midnight oil, right? So it's really making sure that we're taking these lessons for wrestling and we're using it as a vehicle for their entire life. So that's why I think that why is so important. When we train our mindset staff, so we have 80 mindset coaches that work for us around the country. So it's all done from home. And we work with all sports now. We have a golf mindset, volleyball, tennis, but it all started in wrestling. When I train our team, I say the first thing we talk about is using wrestling as a vehicle. I use that golden circle that coach put up right there, saying that the first thing we talk about is maximizing the athlete's potential in sports, school, and life. How do we do that? We bridge the gap between physical and mental training. So very quickly, I always ask everyone, what percentage of wrestling is physical versus mental? What do you think? Just throw out a number. 80, 50, 90. We don't know for sure, right? We'll never know for sure. But we know it's very mental. Then how much time are you training physically versus mentally? The opposite, right? It's like 95% physical training and very little mental training. We call that the training paradox. So if we're saying we got to work very hard, we also have to work very smart. It's not just work hard, it's also work smart. It's doing both, right? So our how is we bridge the gap between the physical and mental training, that training paradox, through mental training. And then what do we actually do? Our systematic sports-specific mindset training program containing 70 mindset worksheets to work on the 8 mental muscles. If I start off, when I started doing this 10 years ago, the first thing I would have showed you was the book. Oh, we got all these exercises. We have 9 different mental muscles, and you fill this all out, and it's a systematic program. You're like, whatever. You see how it sounds different when I start off with using wrestling as a vehicle to improve their whole life, sports, school, and life? And then our how is bridging the gap between the physical and the mental training. So that's exactly how I train our people that are in our business, that are providing services. So that's good stuff.
I'm so jazzed. Same thing. Use clear metrics. We talked about the importance of being able to measure, right? Get the athlete's feedback to know whether your culture is truly, your values are being understood and learned by these athletes or not. If they don't have the same expectations of what success looks like for them, then we're not in the right place. So how do we communicate that?
The fundamental mistake that we all make, because I've made it too, is that you assume that because you explained it and they nodded, that communication has taken place. And sometimes that's just not true. Sometimes their nod is just an acknowledgement of you speaking. They hear words. That doesn't mean that they understand. And so your job is to make sure that before you part company, that they actually understand. And so getting your expectations clearly understood really is about 2 parts. It's about the scope of work that you need to have done, whatever that is. And it's about how you plan to measure that scope of work. Let's break those down one at a time. So in the world of expectations, the first thing that you can do is demonstrate the actual activity you want to do. And you may have to stand up and, kind of get loose and actually go do the thing and have them walk with you, have them listen to you, have them be part of a walkthrough, whether it be with a client or a customer or a vendor or what have you. But you may have to actually walk the whole experience through with them and fully demonstrate what it is that you are trying to do.
I didn't want to get into the second one. Isn't that crazy? I told you on Friday this is what was going to happen. On Saturday, you let it happen. It's your fault now. Right? It's me doing the same thing in that bucket of stress. I'm just trying to get that stress off me and out of my bucket and onto somebody else's bucket. And is that why we vent? Right? Are we listening to learn? So anyway, communications, parents' expectations. Thoughts? Is that?
Keep going.
That's good?
I'll hit it after this one.
Okay, good. This is where we probably break into our small groups and start to get some of these discussions going. One would be, do you know your why? Talking to people about that, like, what's your why? How do you work that? So getting a chance to talk a little bit. And then do you communicate that clearly to the parents and to the expectations, what the parents are? Because you see it all the time. How many of these parents are pushing kids too hard, not being there enough, being there but not even knowing what to do? If our job as coaches and leaders is to lead and teach, we have to make sure that we're the ones that put that responsibility on ourselves. It doesn't have to be me, that I'm always the reason it's wrong, but it often has to be me, I'm the reason that I'm setting the culture and making it right.
So this is what I'm thinking out. This is making me get the wheels spinning. So we have the right side of our brain and the left side of our brain. Right side of our brain is more responsive to emotions, feelings, and flow. You listen to music, right side of your brain. Left side of your brain is more analytical, theoretical, logical. When you're doing math or reading, That's the left side of your brain. Which side of your brain do you want to use? Both, that's right. So, and some people are more right brain dominated, some people are more left brain dominated. So how do we make our messages sink in? We got to deal with both left brain people and right brain people. Left brain people, we need to marinate them in a little bit more data. Like you said about assessing, if you're not assessing, you're guessing, right? So you got to be measuring everything. You got to be evaluating, right? So that's a key thing. So ways that we relate to people, we're telling them a lot about the numbers. I love this coaching the pyramid of that we had here, cone of expectations. You guys talk about this already?
Not yet.
Okay, so
We might have really quick touch on.
just important to have numbers for the people, right? That's important. Giving them data, right? What's the evidence? What does science say about this? Is this logical? Is this rational? Also, on the other hand, people who are right-brained, we need to have more appealing to vision and ideas, more like pictures, analogies. That's a critical thing. So one of the things I tell all of our groups, I say, look at the greatest warriors of all time. Your wrestlers, that means you want to be warriors. The Spartans, the samurai, the Aztecs, the Apache, and even right down to those 1st, 2nd, 3rd century Christian martyrs. What do they all have? Yeah, and I called them warriors too. What do all those groups have in common? U.S. military, Navy SEALs, Marines, what do they have in common, all of them? 2 things. They know what they believe, and they're willing to die for it. All those groups, they know what they believe, and they're willing to die for it. So in those difficult moments where the virtue is on the line, whether it's win or go by our principles, that's what we got to be willing to die. It's not always a physical death, right? And in a wrestling match, it's like if one of our principles on our mindset principles is I'm aggressive and relentless, that's the principle right there. We don't sit on our leads. When we're leading, even by a point or two, we're continuing to score. We're looking to step on their throat, right? Legal, fair, and square, and by the rules. And we're not saying do crazy shots, but we're winning, but with 30 seconds left, we're not in defense mode. You guys watch a lot of football? Don't you hate the prevent defense? The prevent defense prevents you from winning, right? And also, isn't that what defense does all the time? Isn't defense like their job is to prevent? So why are we switching our defense? So the point is, I like to talk about we have to be on the same page with our values. So look at those greatest warriors. They know what they believe. They know their principles. They're willing to die for it. And then when we talk about having those clear expectations, we're very familiar with what we believe. We got to know what it is. So they've actually done studies on this when it comes to diversity. We hear the word diversity and we say, oh, that's a great thing, right? Depends. There are 3 types of diversity. Diversity of values, diversity of ethnicity, and diversity of ideas. Okay? If we don't converge, if we're not the same on values, those other 2 diversities don't help. They hurt. Studies show that. Okay, so diversity of ethnicity is great. Diversity of ideas is great, as long as we're united with our values. That's why it's so important that we stand together on that. Otherwise, those other divisions are going to pull us away from each other. Studies have shown that. So that's a real important thing. I can't tell you who did that study, but it's important to know that. We have to converge on our values. It's not good for us to have different values. It actually hurts an organization, a company, or a country. So I have that.
So we're going to take a few minutes. We'll take about 6 minutes on this. Talk with your groups. Know your why. Talk a little bit about that concept. How would you reframe if you were talking to your parents now, especially focused towards parents, right? So we're trying to think, how am I going to explain that to the parents, and how am I going to set those expectations, and how much do I feel I can set expectations for parents when there's 15 different concepts of what they think right might be. All right, take about 6 minutes on that, and then we'll get back together, and group 1 will be presenting on this.
And I said, you're going to sign that back page. So every time I've had kids that come back and they're like, well, they show up late to practice. And I tell their parents, and I wrestle this. They're like, well, what's that? And I'm like, it's page 4. Code of conduct. You signed it. Here's your signature. You know? And it's trying to tell them, look, you have a role in this. And I actually have a whole section that says parents' responsibilities. You know, and I go through that in the parents' meeting where I specifically say, these are your responsibilities. Attend as much as you can. Cheer your kids on. Let me be the coach, and you be the parent perspective. You know. Well, I mean, it is. For the most part, it's been receptive. I will say, I always have parents that are the they always push back. They're like, you know, I've coached my kid longer than you've coached him. And I said, that's great. I said, and I give an example, I'm like, you know, like national teams, right? If you want to go to a national team, you're generally not going to be on that coaching staff. By a certain point, you're removed from that situation. You're generally never going to coach your kid all the way through, however they go. If they want to go to national teams, it's like that, you know? I mean, we've coached our kids and stuff like that, and it's, I know, like with my daughter, by the time she was 17 or 18 years old, I honestly did not want to coach her. We butted heads with each other, and by that point, it's not only family friction, it's wrestling friction, and it just caused so many problems after a while. And it made so much sense for us. You know, some people make it work and things like that. I know for us, at a certain point, I
You've seen both sides.
yeah, and like for my kids,
child, why that physical, mentally.
Wasn't easy.
Why is what is
I got a lot to say right now.
that?
You know, I left it up to
Then once
him
you
to
sell it,
grab the camera and go watch it on his own.
why
Put it together.
parents is going to change my children's life.
I think it,
All
I
their
think
money.
it's a level, and that's one of our
In our
challenges.
club
Yeah.
over the years, we've
The advanced group,
really
more advanced kids, but they're still pretty young.
when you're in the NCAA.
Older kids that are new to it, but it's too old to be down in the intermediate beginners, so we got some wide range of stuff.
Semi-final promotion.
I would think live for that, just with those range of ages,
We have 30 kids in the club.
levels would be,
The NCAA
these kids that fun to learn something about
We have
wrestling.
a club.
And want them to come back next year.
Semi-final,
Simplest term.
9 guys. We only have 40 in the room. Why are we
Parents are on board with that and recognize their places. That you have the tournaments and things are. It's even worse for the parents on the sidelines. You're sitting here trying to coach. You've got a parent on top of you that's trying to coach too.
Barbara Chan, cutting weights, all that.
The other big thing I'd really like to make sure the parents know, especially at the elementary level, because that's where it's going to start. Wrestling is not
Times difference from like
that kind of sets the tone for the program. I ask that question, and then I give them that back.
for sure.
And you say something like, I tell parents right away,
It's more fun oriented. It's 50-50.
I tell them, there are things that you're best touching space.
So it's
Constant activity, they need to have a coaching staff that is knowledgeable enough to take them where they need to go. And 3, they need family and friends.
there's probably 1 or 2 moves taught.
These are all things that they have to have. We have no exception. You take one away,
But it's not nearly as sharp as fire, maybe something that has a dash of wrestling, like producing all charges that they bounce around. But I think in the high school room, I'm saying it'd be popular, but I don't think I
why I'm currently in the
have
process right now of starting a street story they are ready.
I just think it's different. Where I'm at now.
Do you know Joey's driver?
I just think you're 6 in the state.
He is one of my favorites. I am actually going to a campground for a week. That's 15 minutes from his house. My fiance is not quite aware of that. But he wanted to go to Maine. I'm like, okay, we're going here. I'm like,
Because I hear a lot of people talking about that. I think I'm probably a minority when like I said, I don't think I've ever
they did last year too.
I don't remember hearing that. And I don't remember hearing it. The fun was, the end justifies the means. The fun was, did we get top 5 of the state? Got on the podium. And I know, average, there's not about winning.
Part of that too is
It's divided between 13 and younger, and 13 and older.
Well, but I think a lot of Johnny now.
We're talking about here, at least in my world,
in the New England area. I love
13
Johnny.
and younger, keep it fun, have some games,
Yeah, that's
Someone said
New
something
England
about Tennessee.
has not traditionally ever had strong wrestling space.
They're not playing that broad, but I have games. he recognizes
Cargo and
good character kids on the team. You know how many what do you do? Kick off 2 all night?
there's a couple states that traditionally don't do that. North and South Carolina, Georgia,
National champion.
have traditionally been horrible. Rhode Island did another all-night. Yes.
Great. Thanks for your attention. Okay. Group 1, what do we think? If we could too, we're going to try to present so that we're presenting mostly towards the group because that's going to help us get a little bit of the audio and video on the camera as well. So Group 1, we talked a little bit about do you know your why? What were your thoughts? What came up there?
So, I guess in explaining it to parents, the why that we kind of sat here and worked through was we were leading towards talking to the parents about goal attainment, and understanding that at the youth level the goals are different than you might have at a high school or an elite level, and understanding that at the youth level, like Omar was saying, maybe it's just to get them to smile in practice, because they're so miserable and everything else, that maybe getting them to smile in practice is exciting and happy and gets them to understand how to try to do that, and explaining that to parents. That I might not necessarily yell at your kid or push them, or maybe you want something else at a youth level. My goal is for those kids to just smile when they're coming out of practice, Or like you were saying, about the high school level, maybe it's not necessarily for them to necessarily just have fun. Maybe it's setting a goal that we are going to do this as a team, or this is what your personal goal is, and we're going to work you hard to get there. And you get that sense of satisfaction from setting that goal, achieving that goal, things like that. And explaining to your parents that it's about, we have goals, kids have goals, and we're trying to get them to that, and that's what our why is, getting to that goal attainment.
I like it. Other thoughts from the group?
I think that was the main idea, more about you are training a team a lot of times, but each individual plays their role, whatever role that is. You may have a guy that's terrible, and his main goal has to be you're never going to get pinned because we can't give up 6 points. So everybody's goal is different, and I think parents think that everybody should be the same. Everybody goes be a state champ. Well, your kid's not going to be a state champ. And we need to be honest with parents and say that. I don't think we can go around the bush and tell parents and promise them the world, this guy's going to be a world champ. No, he has 1 foot shorter than the other one. I don't think it's going to work. But we can get him to win a couple matches, though, and that would be his plus for the year. So it's an individual thing for me, I think. And if, for me, like Bill Belichick, if everybody does your job, then you never know what the team can do.
Just as a member of the group, I had a kid that came in and, when I was coaching at Stevens, and I said, hey, what are your goals? Where do you want to be? He said, I want to win nationals. It was his senior year. I said, okay. I said, you were our backup at the weight last year. The guy that was ahead of you beats you up pretty good. And at the end of the day, that guy didn't even make it to nationals. So for you as the guy that gets thumped by him to be here saying that, and what I did for him in that moment, I said, I'm not going to shoot down your dream, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what I think you need to do in order to reach that goal. I think you need to disenroll from school, and I'll work with you at the administrator's office, and we'll make sure that you can get disenrolled and get back in when your time's up. But I think you need to go out to Colorado Springs for a year to the Olympic Training Center. You're probably going to have to live in your car. You're probably going to have to go into the training center every day. I'll help you get your pass. But you're going to have to work a part-time job in between all this. You have to go into the training center twice a day and wrestle with the best guys in the world because you just don't have the volume that you need to be able to make that happen next year. So I'm not going to say you can't be a national champion, but I will tell you it won't happen next year. And if you took that year off and trained with these guys, then maybe you'll come back and you'll have an opportunity because of that experience you've learned. Because we have to change your environment. You're not ready right now in this short amount of time that we have. And he just kind of looked at me and he goes, huh. He said, maybe I'll change my goal. And I said, that's up to you. If you want to keep that goal, I'll help you get there, but here's the path that you need to take. He said, I think I'll change my goal. And he did. He's a great young man, great person, right? But those expectations, those goals, I never want to shoot down that ultimate goal. I don't know if that kid can win. I know he can't right now. But in high school is different because I can't disenroll a kid probably from high school. So there's differences. It was interesting. It's interesting to see how his mindset changed when reality set in of, okay, but here's the process. This is how I think you would have a chance at it. It's great. Yeah. It's a little crazy. How about, were we kind of here too?
Yeah, I think that kind of led to it, where we're clearly communicating to them that for the youth level, our goal and our expectation, we kind of said was, our goal is to get you to high school. Our goal is to get you out of that 70% that's not going to continue, and explaining that to them and saying that every youth group and high school level and things like that, you have different goals and different things that we try to make sure that you understand. And for a youth level, we were kind of saying, we would explain our goal is to make it fun and to get you into the next age group.
We had a big-time D1 coach, ran a club at his college, and they had about 50 kids. And when he started taking over the club, he said, we're going to make sure physical literacy is important. We're going to do a lot of tumbling, and a lot of these activities. And about 30 of the kids from the club quit. You know why? Parents said, you're not tough enough on them. They're not going to be able to thrive in this environment. You need to be tougher on them. We're going to go somewhere where somebody will be tough on them. It's a big time program, big time coach that you'd know. And they're doing it the right way. And a lot of people walked out the door. They didn't want to be a part of that culture or that environment. Okay,
There's three things that I generally open with my coaches meeting in the beginning. I told them, my group, first thing I do is I give them a statistic. The two most commonly sought after people for high level positions are wrestlers and Marines. And then I move into the fact and the idea that wrestling is not a sport. I flat out tell them, wrestling is not a sport. It's a lifestyle. I said, if you want to be good, you need to commit. There is no other way. And then I follow that immediately up with the three things that from my experience and talking with other coaches and actually sitting down at different points in time, that a wrestler needs, especially at the elementary, junior high level and into the high school level, they need three things to become important or successful in the sport of wrestling. Number one, they need a desire to be good and the willingness to work for it. Number two, they need a knowledgeable coaching staff that can take them where they need to go. And three, and most importantly, they need a supportive family that will help them to get to where they need to go. And those three things I have found that if you leave one leg of the tripod out, the whole tripod's going to fall. And I've seen it more times than not that you drop one of those legs of that tripod, boom, he either quits wrestling or he doesn't succeed.
That's great. You know your why. You clearly communicate that to the parents. Now we have an opportunity to bring everybody together and work in that environment. And it doesn't matter whether I agree with your why, it doesn't matter how we do it. You know it, that's how you're moving forward, and that's what we're hoping to keep kind of communicating through. Great organization. If you've never had a chance to work with Positive Coaching Alliance, they are tremendous. This is a group of people that are out there to help youth sports, with parents. Their resources online are phenomenal. There's an awesome one that they've got. It's a 100-point exercise, and it's a list that you give that to the athlete and you give it to the parent. And then you say you've got $100 or points or whatever you want to give. And here's a list of things that are important in general, and you get to assign dollar values to each of those things. So it's fun, winning, teammates, fitness, all these different things. You give one to the kid and one to the parent. You have them each fill it out, and then you step back. And after they fill it out, you compare them. And then you give mom and dad, the kids, what's important to the kid. You give the mom and dads to the kid what's important to mom and dad, and then they get to see what's important to the other one. And how many times those don't align? Staggering. Dad might put winning as $25, and the kid said $0. I just don't care about winning. Or vice versa. Maybe the parents just wanted a good sport experience, and the kid said $75 on winning. Wow, where's the disconnect? Doesn't mean it's wrong or right to have those figures in different columns, but it's just interesting when you see the disconnect, then you realize I need to be able to have a better discussion between the parents and the athlete so that we're not so dysfunctional searching for different goals, right? If we can keep everybody together. So this is one, I don't know, the small one version is in there, but if you go to Positive Coaching Alliance, great information. A lot of what we tweet out is PCA type stuff. This is the one from our book with Dr. Gilbert. It's a little bit more of a formal how-to. They give you some time frames. So if you haven't really run one, or if you just wanted to consider, this is some pretty good stuff on how it goes through. And so it's talking a little bit about the introduction, thanking the parents, recognizing their contribution, and sharing your history and qualifications. 3 minutes. And this is for anyone. Why do you think only 3 minutes talking about yourself?
They don't want to hear about necessarily you. They want to hear about like how this program is going to benefit their kids. Like it's about their children. Like you just need to tell them the fact that you were hired as a coach. You're probably confident in some way. Like I walk into a doctor's office, you're a doctor. I'm going to give you like
the benefit of the doubt, right?
something I'm going to think you know what you're talking about, kind of deal. I don't need you to tell me like, well, I went to Penn School and I did clinicals here. Like, is my arm broken? No. I need to know. Tell me why. Tell me how. Because then it's you kind of lose them where they think your ego is showing, and then it can just go left. It can go real left.
I tried to do that at the beginning of the clinic, and I just again love feedback. Did I say too much about myself? Was anybody thinking, this guy, he's a little full of himself, but I'm here. I paid my $350. I'm good. I wanted you to know a little bit about my background. I wanted you to know a little bit of my history, but at the end of the day, I'm not important today to you guys, and that's okay. Like, I don't mean that in a negative way towards myself. I mean that in a way like there's a reason you're here, and there's stuff that you're going to take back. It's awesome. I get to help facilitate. We bring great people in to help facilitate, but at the end of the day, you came here to learn more about yourselves and then be able to take that information back. I love it. That's awesome. Good? Anything else?
They'll look you up. No offense.
Yeah.
I know who you were, and I just to refresh, like I looked up the clinicians. I'm like, you have flow wrestling, you have track wrestling, you have stage sports. If you know Gimp from back in Coach CC wrestled here, and this is what the kids will look you up, and so your stats is.
How many of you guys did that? How many of you guys looked me up beforehand? I talked to a few of you that did. Yeah. Usually I do that. Like if I've got a presenter I don't know and we're running a camp I don't know, I'm going to look that coach up. Hey, Kevin Jackson recommended this coach to come in to help out with our camp. I'm looking him up. I'm looking online. What did he do here? What did he do? Ooh, that's interesting. I don't know if I like that. Hey, KJ, what about this? Oh, yeah, no. That's good. This is this. Okay, cool. You got to do your homework, right? You got to know exactly like where these things are. I think that's great. I think it's a philosophy. Spending almost twice as much time on our philosophy, right? Not my philosophy or our philosophy. Everybody's included. The key points that shape your philosophy, why, the style, the flaw, and your goals, right? If everybody knows the goals for the team, you might say, hey, my kid's third string JV right now. How's he going to help your team win a state title? Would you have an answer for that? I've had literally a fifth string athlete that by the end of the season, because of attrition, injury, and other issues, the fifth stringer would have been my starter, but they came in halfway through the season and quit because they never thought they'd get mat time.
We had that at Rutgers University when I was there. Our fourth string 125-pounder was actually the guy who wrestled in the IWAs because one guy got hurt, other guy was making weight, the other guy wasn't academically eligible. Fourth string guy who really had no business being in a Division I room. He really didn't. He was the guy who wrestled at the IWAs. Yep.
Stepping on the mat, giving you a chance to score points, right?
Yeah, and hey, God bless him. He stuck it out. He did the hard work. He put it on the line. He got rewarded.
It's so easy to see the short term. Oh, it sucks. It's not good. I'm never gonna. Right, and then that becomes a thinking trap, right? So when a kid comes in and says, "Hey, I'm fifth string. This is never going to work out for me." Really? How do you know that? Have you ever known that kid that was fifth string that made it? Right? We've all got stories where we've seen phenomenal. Does it happen a lot? No, but it does happen. And maybe that's enough to keep somebody engaged. And now we know our philosophies, right? We all have written philosophies. You can hand out your coaching philosophy to a parent. I've had moms call me up and say, I live in Minnesota. I've got a family situation. Father of the children had passed away unexpectedly. She's like, I have to make sure that I put my child into a positive environment because this young child, after losing a father, if he goes in and all of a sudden somebody roughs him up a little bit or is a little bit too much, what could that do to my kid long term? She's like, I've looked at every club page in our state None of them have their coaching philosophies on their websites or their Facebook pages. None of them talk about how they do what they do or why they do what they do. It's just, here's our club, here's our practices, pay your money and come in. If we want to evolve as a sport and stay relevant and not become extinct, we can't operate in the same way that we've operated in the past. It's not good enough, right? We have to think, okay, right? I don't care if it's Facebook, website, or a printed material. If it's in there and you hand it out, now people at least know what they're getting into. They've got an idea. And then if you're not showing them the consistency, they can say, hey, you know, that coaching philosophy that you handed to me, you've kind of fallen away from that. And the reason I brought my kid was for this. And you're giving me that. And I don't feel comfortable in that. So either the philosophy goes back on track or we're going to have to remove ourselves from the program to find a better environment. Right? She shouldn't have had to have looked that hard. How many other moms or dads or guardians around this world are looking for places to invest their kids, right? Now her kid finally did. She found out about the club. We did some research. She was a friend of mine. We got her into the club, and the kid's having a good experience. But she wouldn't have even had to ask the question had they given her all that information up front. How many people are we not getting into the sport because we haven't communicated that philosophy or set those expectations yet? And again, 7 minutes, more time, way more than twice of what we're doing about us. Logistics, 10 minutes. Holy crap, how many of you guys struggle with logistics, getting kids on the bus, getting them to tournaments, getting them food, all the issues, right? How many times do you have parents complain about that, right? If we've set the expectation and we're still having trouble and a parent complains about it, guess what you probably will end up getting out of that parent? A volunteer. Hey, you have a problem with us logistically, even though we said this is what we want to do. Well, it turns out we just don't have the staffing to do it. Would you be willing to help, Mom? Would you be willing to help, Dad? Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know. How are we going to fix the culture if you're not willing to be a part of the solution? I had a boss tell me years ago, you come to me with a problem, I'm throwing your butt out of my office. You come to me with a problem and a couple of solutions, I'll sit down and I'll listen to you.
Briefly on that, in our business, we actually made it a company policy last year that no one could come to us with a problem without at least offering some kind of solution. So I'd strongly recommend that. Also, one of our mindset worksheets that we were telling you about, we changed the words we use. We don't call them problems, we call them challenges. Everyone hates problems, people like to meet challenges, so we don't even call them problems. So it's a challenge. And they don't get to bring up a problem to you. I'd recommend that as a coach policy. You don't get to bring up a problem unless you offer some kind of solution.
Kind of like green framing, huh? He wasn't even in the back of the room for the green framing thing. So. And I swear, we didn't rehearse this. We're not. And then common questions. We've got a coach in Colorado, and I've asked him to just write down every question that a parent has asked him that we could create like a Q&A, like an FAQ, frequently asked questions. Hey, if these are frequently asked questions that a lot of your parents are asking, are they on your website? Are they on your Facebook page? Are they in your philosophy book? Because if they're there, you can answer a lot of the problems, and the parents are gaining trust because they see that you're addressing these things already. They gain trust in you right away with that. And things, safety, right? If your first statement to parents is, when your child comes into our care, we're going to make sure we're doing everything to give them the safest environment possible. Do you think that would ease parents' minds? Right? And then if we back it up, right, and say, we do skin checks every day. Well, why would you do skin checks every day? Well, because herpes gladiatorum has a 7 to 8 day incubation period. So you go to a tournament on Saturday and maybe it doesn't pop up till Thursday. Well, we did skin checks on Monday. I was clear. I wasn't on Thursday. So weekly skin checks, they aren't going to care for a lot of the issues that pop up. But what's a daily skin check look like? Maybe Mondays with the athletic trainer. Maybe Tuesday we're like, okay, 1 minute, 30 seconds, partner A, look over partner B, see what kind of skin issues you might see. And then they can just go look, take a look. Am I protected? Arms, legs. Yeah, coach, he looks good. I think he's good. Okay, now you check me, look me over, hairline. Yeah, okay, no ring, nothing. And if you've got any questions, just come up and show it to coach. Now we've formed this bond. And now you got a couple parents, hey, and now if your kid's having trouble, I might say, hey, you know what, Jay, I'm sorry, your name?
Alex.
Alex. Alex's son's having a little bit of trouble. Why don't you go encourage them a little bit more, because now we're talking. Maybe just say, hey, how's Alex doing at practice? Now you got more people watching and as part of that culture, right? Crazy. Thoughts? Questions? You want to talk about those a little bit, about that parents' meeting sheet? You feel like there'd be value in having some time to discuss, not even just that sheet necessarily, but what's worked for you, what challenges you've had with parents, and how did you face it? Because the experience in this room has already solved the problems, the art of war, right? Every battle has already been won. You guys know how to fix the problems. If these are problems or challenges you've had, let's just take maybe 5 minutes with your group. Let's discuss it a little bit more and just see what else we can share and learn from each other.
We gotta get together. We're on the same
Four separate practice fields. Because watching the kids, it works well, of course, but this is not what they were talking about. You do the main parent meeting, but then every coach first week takes the same outline. Do it in practice. Doesn't have to be the same talk. Bullet points. Like, remember this. We'll discuss. Here's a to the parents, because then they get in a small group, and there's not 120 families. It's it's more information for the parents there, and they can ask more pointed questions. But at least the message will be the same the whole way around. All working on the same. If they have input and everything's meeting. Yeah, right. Because every year, the youngest group, you know how it is, you're always like, you need to like, because as kids use this, they love to do
It's like almost the same paper, just like
you know,
with the parents, and they it's like other published comments. You heard what I said, I let you ask questions, and like you're like, what do you tell me? It's like, oh, you're like the science, right? Like you were there at this meeting, so I don't know if you're just connected or stuff like that. So I think that helped like the coach not in that kids get the same paper as their parents, like get like parents sign here, so like next step a little bit more. You're the one coaching that group.
parents will get more now you're the leader of this group.
I think when I was growing up, we had like really like when I was like I did rap and sing in town, so we had like really good programs. Parents volunteered, everyone had a ride, things like that. Like now, I think it's so. I almost find it harder. My wife and I years ago, I feel like everyone's gotten busier, and it's just communication under pressure. I think they don't you kind of almost now have to tell them, we're going to need this, or else that tournament's not I think we kind of also expect people to want to help, but not necessarily tell them that that's a big problem. Is just the wrestlers. You need help. Listen, I can't do it. I need help. Even when I'm at work, like it has nothing to do with wrestling. It's like a big hill to swallow for my boss. Getting drowned. I'm not going to survive this. I need you to help me out. And I've gotten better at doing it. It doesn't bother me all the time, but I think, telling the parents what we expect of ourselves, what we expect of the kids, and what we expect of them. Listen, you want the team to have new singlets? We're going to have to follow it. I've only been in one program and seen it once where parents are like, yeah, where do I sign? Here's some check, it doesn't always happen. It's like, hey, listen, you want your son to work out, who's going to drive? More school workouts, whatever, maybe, I remember everything just done. We have school by my dad or my mom at whatever time. For a couple of years, telling them, if you expect your son to 100% is, my son is, he never wrestles. They realize, he's a human being. You want to see him on a Sunday throwing sports on throwing
And if they do, and if they do eat it right, it's like,
it's your responsibility. So stay That was your expectation.
Junior highs and middle school. So by
I think
they're done. So
the dumbest move I ever had the principal was really excited. Sales trying to get the kids out there.
but we wouldn't have wrestling.
Get out, sign up. Really special. And I was like, it's fine. Like, yes, we have a bus at this time. Like, it's fine.
They'll take care of all the money.
And his requirements, so I was not allowed to be in school.
You tell me how they're doing.
we already lived in the other district.
So my favorite tool in coaching is the countdown. It's crazy. We did this in a camp in Illinois, and I said, I told all my buddies, just as an experiment, I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach a move, and then I'm just going to say, go do it, and see how the kids do things. Do this in your room. Just teach a move and say, go ahead, and then just stand back. It's not about the move. It's not about how they do it. It's just about, let them do the move. You'll see kids will be walking around. Okay, I'll get out there and do that. But if you say, okay, we're going to be ready. We're going to be drilling in 10. Ready? Break. 10, 9, 8. The intensity level that you speak with and count down with tells them the motivational level that they need to be, the hustle level they need to be at. You said so much as body language, right? And so if you're like, 10, 9, 8, 7, they're going to be, okay, we got to go. But if you're like, just go ahead and do it. Go out. How we communicate affects them so much. It's crazy to see the difference. So, again, play it, send me an email, let me know if it works. You guys like to talk about this a little bit? Give us a presentation?
I think, well, nowadays, I think we have to be more open with parents and telling them what we expect from them, too. I think they don't realize what goes on in a season. Most of them, I mean, I would say half the parents I talk to or interact with haven't wrestled. And they just don't realize that if the team needs new singlets, okay, we need new singlets. It's great to say, it's great to have the designs and everything, but we're going to need to do a fundraiser, we're going to need to run this tournament and run the food stand or whatever it may be. And I think like saying that we need help and saying that, hey, you know, if we need a volunteer to do something, telling them that we need it is a big part of it. And, you know, I think it's tough for us to actually ask for help and say, I don't think we can do it. I know personally I had trouble with that, and I still do at times, you know, even at my job saying, I need help, I can't do this. It's kind of like, you know, it just makes me, you know, not feel good to say I can't do this. But, you know, the second I ask my, you know, my manager, someone, and they jump in and they're happy to help. You know, people are happy to help if they see that they can make an impact on you. And I think parents kind of think, oh, well, we'll just let them do their things. And, you know, they haven't asked for help. You know, no one's jumping up to do it. You know, rarely will you get like a good parent that just, what do you need? I'll be there. What, you know, this, and this is done. I got this done. You know, rare will that happen. So we have to tell them, hey, this is what we need. We have a long season ahead. Kids are going to need rides. You know, we're going to have early practices. We're going to have late practices. And, you know, you expect the team to win or you expect your kid to get better, you're going to have to be there right with them or with her. You know, and it's going to be dedication on both parts, on all three sides. It's not something that we can do without you, and have them included in the kid's success, because they do feed off of that. You know, if their child is winning and doing better, you know, even small things like, you know, gets a takedown or doesn't just get pinned, and okay, well, I brought my son or daughter to the morning practices and that started helping, and I saw them get better and I'm helping them, you know, instead of that parent that's just on the side yelling and thinking that that's helping, you know, their wrestler perform better. You know, that's not the help that they need.
And sometimes they just need to hear it, right? Yeah. I've had coaches call me up and I failed the bronze class and completely screaming and yelling at me, and sometimes I just say, hey, if you're not mature enough to handle this responsibility, how do you handle 40 kids? And they don't like that, right? Nobody wants to hear that. But I had a guy, and he you know, he's like, I was in the military, I know responsibility. I said, I was in the military too. And the fact that you didn't handle this disappoints me in who you are. And he just and hung up. You know what? I was just like, you know, I might have gone too far there. You know? I might have dumped a whole bucket into his bucket because I was expecting it to stress. And he hung up. And you know why he hung up? He hung up because I think he needed to give himself some space to reflect. He called back 20 minutes later and he goes, you know what? You were right. He's like, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And you're right. I valued my service in the military more than trying to pawn that off as a way to get this course back for free. So if you're still willing to send it to me, I'll go ahead and pay you the next $80. And I said, man, I don't want your $80. It cost me more to process the paperwork. We're going to give you the course back. That was the lesson we needed to know. He said, I appreciate that. I appreciate the lesson. I appreciate you working with me on that. Right? Sometimes we have to be tough in those tough situations when we know it's right. But sometimes we've got to be a little bit more flexible too. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's an art. You've got to be careful with it. But sometimes at the right time, and I would definitely recommend bounce it off people before you do something like that. Because sometimes we get mad, right? And we want to say it. And usually in that moment where you want to say it, that's where you should hold your tongue. Talk to someone about that, discern that a little bit further, pray over it, and then go back to it, right? At another time. So like I know there was another club coach that like this dad was just overbearing, which you could probably, you know, extrapolate to any club. Dad was just overbearing with the kid. He had to be a success, and this had to be a success with that. And finally, the dad just had enough. And he said to him, you know, what are you ranked in the country in your job? You know, let's see your bank account. Lift your shirt. Let's see your six-pack. You know, so because it was like the kid had to be like, you know, it's hard to be ranked in the country in wrestling. It's hard to get all A's, and it's hard to, you know, be, you know, I guess socially successful. How the kid sees it. So it's real important that. It was a good time. The coach knew the father really well. He already built the trust. So it wasn't like it was just an off-the-fly remark, you know, off-the-cuff remark. So sometimes you do have to hit him with a little bit of honesty at the right time. But discern it, pray over it, do it right.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So one thing that I did starting last year was I had what I call parent practices, in which I bring the parents in and the kids actually coach their parents. And one of the things I did was I specifically put them in a half Nelson and put them on their back, where all those parents like to yell at their kids, get off your back, get off your back, get off your back, right? And I said, okay, I want you to understand, if somebody is squeezing your head right and they're putting proper pressure on, you're not getting up. No matter how much you yell, it's not helping the situation. And the parents that came actually understood it better and then weren't the problem parents the next year. You know, they understood more to a degree and empathized with what their kids go through. Because most of them couldn't even make it through just the warm-ups. You know, it was just set of dynamic warm-ups, and they were like, oh, I can't roll. I'm like, well, I don't care. You know, I said, your kid comes in, I don't care if he's the heavyweight or the little kid, if they can't do it, I'm like, you try. And I'm going to ask the same thing of you. You know, and they all signed waivers saying that there was nothing wrong with the practice and stuff. But, you know, I told them, I said, look, you have to try. And then when they did that, and then they saw their kids doing it, they all gained a little bit more respect for their kids and what they put through with it. And it gave them more empathy for what the kids go through in a season when they're coming back going, yeah, I just lost, you know.
How many of us are thinking we might start a parent practice in our program? Thanks, Alex. That's a good one.
I
Chris.
just want to piggyback off that one thing. I hear coaches say it a lot, and it drives me nuts even more when coaches say it than when parents say it. Put their kids on their back, and all they're yelling is, get off your back. Why not try and tell them how to get off their back?
That's the problem, because they don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes the coach doesn't know either.
Then all that does is make the kids go more and more frantic because they can't do what they're being told to do because they have no direction.
Yeah. Oh, you see it all the time. Sports.
Oh, as a ref, I hear it nonstop. I know! I'm trying to tell them how to get off his back. Get your arm through. Turn out. Come on.
I told her earlier, within 6 months ago, this lady, she came to practice, and I brought 4 kids from 5 to 12 years old. So she said, look, they're not going to actually engage in wrestling, but they'll do wrestling type exercises, right? So I spoke with the lady for a while. All of a sudden, she's gone. Hour and a half later, she comes back, and I said, ma'am, you don't know us. You don't know the boxing coaches are, but yet you left your 4 kids with us. So I spoke to her quite firmly, right? That it's not safe for her to do that. So she never came back, which that was okay because, you know, we're not a babysitting service, right?
Yeah, so it's not mine, not me babysitting.
Yeah.
It's tough. And that's part of setting those expectations, right? If we can do that, then we can communicate it, and then when that happens, we can say, hey, this is what we talked about.
One good point also on top of what you were saying about asking for help. I learned this from Coach Goodale, worked with Rutgers several years over there, and one of the things he always said as a coach, always have an answer when a parent asks you, what can I do to help? Okay, like how many times you have a parent or a sponsor, a donor, someone, an alumni, sometimes people will just say, hey, what can I do to help? Or if there's anything I could ever do to help, just let me know. Always have an answer for that. And what does that really mean? Ourselves getting organized. Gotta have an answer.
That's awesome. I would like to end it on that. I think that's important. If we practice plan, if we have these answers ready, if we know what our philosophies are, if we go into this environment organized, knowing what we want, it gives us the best chance to reproduce it and keep it going, right? Give these kids a great environment where they can learn and grow. I think that's everything.
Do you want me to hit on the parent thesis?
Yes.
That we talked about?
Yes, please.
So I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So, yeah, because it's a pretty important piece there of the puzzle. So a lot of the stuff that we spoke about today, we were talking about getting the values understanding our values and communicating our why. So the way we break our mindset program down, we work with a lot of teams and individuals year round. We break down the year into phase 1 and phase 2. Right? We were working with the Olympic Greco team. We see their phases. It's like pre-competitive phase, competitive phase, peaking, preparation, all that stuff. It's broken down. Right? Well, I never saw a mindset broken down into different phases. And I thought like that just doesn't make sense. Right? So our phase 1 is what we deal with after the season up to before the preseason. Right? So basically from mid-March through August is phase 1. And what are we talking about there? Goal setting, mental toughness, motivation, knowing our why, knowing our values. Right? That's very important. So that's why this time of year is a great time to do a mindset training. Then during the season, we shift to phase 2, which is more geared towards peak performance, relaxing under pressure, confidence, aggressiveness, taking chances out there. Of course, there's overlap. They're not mutually exclusive, but there's a greater focus on one during phase 1 and greater focus on peak performance in phase 2. So the point is this. This is a lot of the stuff we were talking about is what we call phase 1. right? So now how do we take the team and help them to win, relax under pressure, and be confident? That's what we're talking about with phase 2, with setting expectations and understanding, getting on the same page with parents, communicating with parents. That's more phase 2. So one of the things we do with our individuals and our teams, this is Self-Knowledge Week 10. We have what we call a parent mindset guide. And we do the same exact thing with the coaches, a coach's mindset guide. So when I was at Springfield College, I was an assistant coach there, and I was also doing my master's degree in exercise science, sports psychology. And my study that I did my thesis on was perfectionism and anxiety in wrestlers. Okay, so wrestlers that were more perfectionistic, they got more nervous, they did worse in competition. So we broke it down. We gave them an anxiety inventory, and we gave them a perfectionism inventory. So now perfectionism was broken into 6 different subscales. 2 of the subscales had to deal with parents, parental expectations and parental criticism. Now, that I kind of said it as a blanket term. It really should be perceived parental expectations, perceived parental criticism. And what do we find? The results were very clear. That the athletes who perceived that their parents' expectations were too high and the parent criticism that was too high, they wound up getting more nervous and they did worse. So we have the data to back that up. So basically what I did is I took those results, I looked at those questions that they assessed for perfectionism, parental criticism, parental expectations. I reworded it so I don't get hit with any kind of plagiarism. But this is basically the exact questions from the Frost multidimensional perfectionism scale. But I just changed the wording around. And basically we'd be able to see if they're answering yes to these questions, these 6 questions, that would tell you the parental expectations and criticism is too high. So it becomes a red flag. Does that make sense? And so I figured this, how many times have I been very nervous because of different coaches that had unreasonable expectations or overly critical? So we just applied the same thing to coaches. So we have that, the yeses and the nos. That tends to work really well with like middle school athletes because they don't do as much like open-ended thinking. They need to be given an answer. Makes sense? But then when we deal with our high school, college athletes, or our Olympic athletes, and some of the top UFC fighters that we work with, this is the one that really, part 2 of that exercise really helps. So we have the 5 questions that every coach should ask their athletes. Okay, so for the first question is, what are some of the things, and also, parents and coaches, same thing. So the first question is, what am I doing that's helping you mentally? So you want to know that. I recommend all of our teams, so we did this with St. Cloud State. This was a big deal with them. We had them sit down. They did meetings with all of their individual starters. I'd ideally do the whole team, but at least do the starters. And find out, what am I doing that's helping you mentally? And have them write it down. Then number 2 is, what am I doing that might be inadvertently hurting you mentally? Right? Now if I'm dealing with a kid, the way I'm going to ask these questions are, what does your parent do that helps you mentally? What might they be doing that's inadvertently hurting you mentally? My dad talking about the rankings. My dad telling me, oh, this kid's a little bit older than you. Like if I lost a match, my dad would go, well, it's okay, he's a senior. And what happened? It starts getting in my head. If he's a senior and I'm only a sophomore, I'm not supposed to beat him. So that would be one of those things. He didn't mean to do it, but that was probably hurting me. Also, I think about with my brothers, when I would coach them, I was always yelling, like a lot, going over the top. And I realized that once I was coaching at Springfield College, I learned a lot coaching people that weren't my brothers. I realized you only have an opportunity to impact the match in key moments. There's probably only about a dozen, maybe 2 dozen situations, if I was going to coach now, that I would even speak up. Because most of the time, you don't really need to say anything, and you really can't impact the match. You're just driving yourself crazy, and you're giving the wrong body language to your wrestlers, right? How many coaches we see, they want to embrace that attitude of have fun. They're like, just have fun out there. It's like, come on, like, let's get with it. Like the kid's paying attention to how you look more than what you're saying. So the point is, we have them write that down. What's helping you mentally? What's hurting you mentally? The third question, how do I prefer my parents to critique me? So we want the athlete to actually fill this out by themselves for their parent and for their coach, individually with their mindset coach. So they would go through it, because all athletes, just like no 2 fingers on your hand are the same, no 2 kids are the same. I use the example of me and my brothers. All ranked in the top 20 in the country in college, all 3 of us different levels of sensitivity. You could say to my brother Jeff, the middle guy, you could say to him, if you don't work on your defense, you're going to lose. And he's like, okay, no problem. Right? For me, I'm a little bit more sensitive than that. I'm like, you don't have to say it like that. And I'm kind of like, okay, whatever, I'll do it, but I'm kind of harboring a grudge. Right? I might take it out on him in a different way, passive aggressively. Right? My brother Greg, you tell him that, if you don't work on that, if you don't work on your defense, you're going to lose. He might never listen to you again. Okay? he's the most sensitive. Here's the problem. You just lost your best wrestler. He was the best out of the three of us. So, and it's not that I was more mentally tough or Jeff was more mentally tough. It's just different personalities, different levels of sensitivity. We're coaches, okay? So coaches have to be able to give critiques. That's a very important thing. You know, this day and age, there's not the same kind of respect for authority that there should be. It's very important you tell your athletes, coaches here, athletes down here. My personal coach in college, he sat me down and he said that, listen, off the mat, we're friends. When we're on the mat, it's coach, athlete. It can't be in between, right? Yeah, and same thing with parents. You're not your kid's friend right away. You're your kid's parent, and then so eventually when they turn, 25, then they can become your good friend, right? So that's an important thing. We get scared of authority these days. Don't be afraid of saying that. There is authority, and it's important that the kids know that. Otherwise, they're going to suffer in school and in their life. So what's their critique level? Does it have to be very positive? Does it have to be straightforward? You want to know what works for them. Okay, so I love pizza. It's my favorite food, so it always has been. When I go fishing, I don't put pizza on the hook. What do I put on the hook? Bait or lure. Why? Because they're not going to eat what I like. They're going to eat what they like. Okay? So the important thing is this. You have to frame the information in a way that they're going to understand it. Now again, you're dealing with a room of like 40, 50 people. Oh, this contact popped out. You're dealing with a room of hard contacts. Thank goodness I didn't wrestle with these on. This would have been a real pain. But nonetheless, you're dealing with a room of 40, 50 people. You might have to just say it a certain way. But when you get the kid individually, you want to be able to tailor it to them because it's how they hear it. Just like we said with those subscales of perfectionism, it's not so much parental expectations, it's perceived parental expectations. That makes sense? There's a big difference. It doesn't so much have to do with reality, it has to do with the kid's interpretation of reality. Okay? So understand the level of criticism, how they want to be dealt with criticism. Number 4, how do you want me to deal with you before a match? And we want the kid to fill that out. How do you want your parents to deal with you before the match? And to make it nice and easy for them, we made it multiple choice. And I intentionally put on answers that I know that they don't want. So number 1, fire me up, get me mad, yell, slap me in the face. How many kids do you think picked that one? Very few. Some do. You're right. Some do. And it's important.
I used to slap myself.
It's important to know that because if I just go ahead and I say, well, you know what, it's not going to work for 99% of the people in the room, I'd lose maybe one of my best wrestlers. So I want to know that. But a lot of people don't like that. And that's how a lot of parents deal with it. So I want the parent, when they sit down with their athlete, to see, oh, look, my kid didn't pick that one. See? I'll make your job a little bit easier. Number 2, keep me calm and relaxed. C, joke around, talk about anything other than wrestling. Some of the top wrestlers. All right, now this is, again, there's a difference between joking around and screwing around. Okay, when you see like Penn State and they're like throwing around the frisbee or like, throwing the ball back and forth to each other before matches, they're joking around. It's strategic, it's planned, it's not screwing around. They're not just slapping each other like randomly and like, goosing each other and not taking it serious. So we say have fun, joke around. There's a big difference between that and screwing around. So we find some of our top athletes, they do very well when you talk to them about anything other than wrestling right before those competitions, right? Going back to that Maryland convention, I guess because it's fresh in my head, one of the coaches challenged me there and said, before the match, I told the kid, this is the most important match of your life before the state finals. I told him, this is the most important match of your life. This is you worked hard for, forever. Go out there and do it. And he said, my kid won. And I said, okay. Do you think he competed at his best? Did he reach his potential that match? He said, no, he kind of underperformed. And I said, if he was wrestling in Jersey, he probably wouldn't have won because he would have needed to be firing on all cylinders. But when you're going against weaker competition, you might be able to get it. No, I'm not trying to make a head-to-head comparison here. But the point is this. The point is just that it doesn't matter if they won or they lost. It's how much of their potential did you get out of them, right? You want to milk every ounce of potential out of yourselves. That's why I assume you're here, right? I want to constantly learn. Mike was just giving me great information for my marriage. I thought that was excellent. I think different things he said. No, it's great. Telling me good different strategies. How to deal with your wife properly. We got to get better, right? If you're not growing or you're dying. Same thing with the business. Same thing with the tree. Same thing with the team or a person, right? Am I content with where I'm at, or am I trying to get better? So what, joking around before competition, that's what I'm saying. Or, you know, should they lay off completely? Some athletes do their best when you just lay off them entirely, right? And I tend to find that if there's an athlete that changes their personality too much before competition, that's usually a red flag, right? If they're a person that tends to be, I always like to laugh and joke around. In high school, I'd put on my headphones, put up my hood, don't talk to anyone. I'm listening to Tupac, I'm listening to Ozzy and Metallica, and I'm thinking you have to be real mad and ticked off, right? And I wonder why I was like a practice room wrestler, right? So in college, I started listening to like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Alvin and the Chipmunks, disco, Christmas music, and then you go out there and all of a sudden you start wrestling a lot more free. Be careful the music you listen to. So you want the kids to understand that, and you want the kids' parents and the kids' coaches to know how to treat them. And then finally, how do I prefer my parents to critique me before or after a match? Or how do I prefer my coaches to critique me after a match? Because some kids like immediate feedback. Some kids would prefer it later on in the day. Some kids would prefer it the next day. Especially as the kids get older, I think we respect them as growing adults, and we try to give them the feedback when they would like it, if we can help it. All right? Because sometimes you could really turn a kid off by giving them feedback at the wrong time. But you are a coach. You do have to give feedback. That is your job. And the kids got to understand that, right? There's a coach, athlete, right? So those are a couple of very key points. And then one of the things we also do with parents, so we have the kids fill out those forms, the yes and no's based on the perfectionism inventory, then those 5 questions. Then we want them to sit down, take this worksheet, and bring it to their parents and sit down with them or with their coaches. This is what I wrote here. And open up, the whole point of the worksheet is for it to be an ongoing conversation. It's to open up the doors for communication. And I tell the kids all the time, this would have been one of the most uncomfortable things to do with my dad when I was in high school, to sit down with this. But how much that would have helped me and how much that would have freed me from maybe any extra stress. Because I knew my dad wanted what was best for me. He was incredibly supportive. And he was being as positive as he could. But sometimes just talking about it. And we've seen some real breakthroughs, even at summer wrestling camps with this, where we had the parent and we had the kid. And the parent was also the coach of the kid. And we said, look, do you want, and we said to the girl, it was, female wrestler, do you want your dad to be coach or do you want him to be dad? And she was crying. She was like, I want him to be dad. And they were like hugging and everything like that and crying. And it was like a tremendous breakthrough right there. I mean, it's usually not that dramatic. But the point is, hey, we got some answers. That's going to probably help their relationship forget about wrestling. If they never wrestle a day in their life, that could help their relationship for the rest of their life. So start communicating. That's the job of this. Now, after we have them fill out those first 2 pages about the parents, then we have them do page 3, which is, do you think your parents will change at all? What came of this meeting that you had? And then finally, part 2 of it, if nothing changes, which in all probability it won't, because not to be pessimistic about it, but very frequently you tell parents don't talk about rankings, and they talk about rankings. How are you going to handle this if your parent is still talking about rankings? Okay? Because we still can't control it. We can't control other people. We can only control ourselves. So expect the worst, hope for the best, that kind of thing, right? I'm hoping it will get better, but if it doesn't, what are you going to tell yourself? Right? If my dad still tells me, oh, you lost to this guy in 5th grade. I knew a guy, big thing what he would do, he'd collect old computer screens, or not computer screens, computer keypads, the delete button. He would keep them in his pocket, a delete button. And anytime he heard something negative, he would click the delete button. He wouldn't know what he was doing. But the point was for him, it was turning it into a funny situation. He wasn't taking himself so serious. He would just delete the negativity and the crap that would go on, the outside world. So again, that was his way of doing it. You might choose to do something different. Yeah, right? So any questions on that? Like I said, this is more geared towards like the peak performance. This is more phase 2. We got to have phase 1. If we're not clear on the values, if we're not clear on the mental toughness, the goal setting, the motivation, we're not even talking about phase 2. But once we have that well established, now we want to have these meetings. How are we going to help this kid win? How are we going to, and forget about just winning, bringing out their potential, their top potential in competition. So any questions on that? I just thought that was relevant to this. Yeah. The expense of being a little wordy.
This is awesome. Thank you, Gene, so much for coming in. I know we're pushed on time, and I hate to be off time, old military thing. I'll be around until everybody's gone. So if you have any questions for me or want to talk about anything, I will stay here until everybody's out of the room. If Gene has a few minutes, please feel free. Hit him up first because I'll stay here as long as I need to, and he's got a wife to get back to. make sure he's taking care of stuff. Thank you very much for your energy and your interest and your open minds today. Looking forward to tomorrow. Communication will start the morning off at 9 a.m. We'll see you then.